Here's something that mainstream history has never been able to explain. 3 of the most advanced civilizations in the ancient world, the Sumerians in Mesopotamia, the Egyptians in North Africa, and the Greeks in Southern Europe, all independently developed complex religions with dozens of gods. Those civilizations had no meaningful contact with each other during the period when their religions were formed. And yet, buried inside each of their traditions is the exact same figure. A god of wisdom, a keeper of secret knowledge, a being who served as a bridge between the divine and the human, who gave humanity writing, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, who carried a staff with 2 separate serpents, who was associated with the planet Mercury, who was described as existing before other gods. The Sumerians called him Enki, the Egyptians called him Thoth, the Greeks called him Hermes. 3 different names, 3 cultures, 1 being. And the deeper you look, the harder it becomes to call this a coincidence. Before we look at each god individually, let's establish a pattern, because this is what makes this so difficult to dismiss. When scholars compare the gods to different ancient cultures, they typically look for broad thematic similarities. Sky gods, earth gods, war gods, sun gods. And yes, every culture has versions of those archetypes. That alone is not remarkable. What is remarkable is when you find not just thematic similarity, but specific, detailed, precise correspondence. The same symbols, the same stories, the same physical descriptions, the same role in the divine hierarchy, the same relationship with humanity. This is what we find when we put Enki, Thoth, and Hermes side by side. All 3 are gods of wisdom and knowledge, not just generally wise, but specifically the keepers of written knowledge, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. All 3 are associated with the serpent. Enki's symbol includes intertwined serpents. Thoth is associated with the Uraeus serpent of Egyptian royalty. Hermes carries the caduceus, 2 serpents wrapped around a staff, which remains the symbol of medicine to this day. All 3 served as intermediaries between gods and humans, between the living and the dead, between the known world and whatever lies beyond it. All 3 are credited with giving humanity the gift of writing. The Sumerians credit Enki with the invention of language and the me, the divine laws that govern civilization. The Egyptians credit Thoth for inventing hieroglyphics. The Greeks credit Hermes for bringing language and writing to humanity. And all 3 are associated with the same planet. In ancient astronomical traditions, Enki, Thoth, and Hermes are all linked to the planet we now call Mercury. Same symbols, same role, same planet, same gifts to humanity. Across 3 cultures that should not have known each other well enough to coordinate this level of detail. So let's look at each one individually, because the specifics are where it gets truly extraordinary. Enki is one of the oldest and most important gods in the entire Sumerian pantheon. His name translates roughly to Lord of the Earth or Lord of Wisdom, and he predates most of the religious traditions we consider ancient today. In the Sumerian texts, Enki is consistently portrayed as the god most sympathetic to humanity, while his brother Enlil, the god of the gods, frequently expressed frustration with humans and sought to limit their development. Enki repeatedly intervened on humanity's behalf. He is the one who warned the Sumerian Noah about the coming flood. He is the one who gave humans the me, the divine laws of civilization including writing, mathematics, agriculture, and music. He is depicted in the cylinder seals with streams of water flowing from his shoulders, often with fish swimming in those streams. He is associated with the Abzu, a subterranean freshwater realm described as the source of all wisdom and knowledge. And here's what makes Enki particularly fascinating in the context of this series. In the Sumerian text, he is described as a scientist, a geneticist in some interpretations, the being most directly responsible for the current form of humanity. He did not just interact with humans. According to the text, he was involved in creating them. That detail, a god of wisdom who is the architect of humanity itself, appears again in Egypt and in Greece, just under different names. Thoth is one of the most mysterious figures in all of Egyptian mythology. And that's saying something, because Egyptian mythology is extraordinarily deep. He is depicted with the head of an ibis, a bird associated in Egypt with wisdom and precision. and he carries a staff and a scroll. He is the god of writing, knowledge, magic, science, and judgment. He is the one who records the results of the weighing of the heart, the Egyptian judgment of the dead. He is the keeper of the divine library, the measurer of time. But here is what separates Thoth from the typical mythological god figure. The Egyptians did not describe Thoth as having been created. They described him as self-created, existing before other gods. In some texts, he is described as the tongue of the Creator, the voice through which creation itself was spoken into existence. And then there's the Emerald Tablets, a text attributed to a figure called Hermes Trismegistus, which translates to thrice great Hermes. This is where Egypt and Greece merge. Hermes Trismegistus is described as being simultaneously Thoth and Hermes, a fusion of the two figures that ancient scholars treated not as mythology but as history. The Emerald Tablets themselves contain knowledge that modern researchers have found extraordinary in its implications, describing principles of physics, consciousness, and cosmology that align in a strange way to the concepts that modern science is only beginning to explore. Whether the Emerald Tablets are ancient wisdom or medieval forgery is debated, but the fact that the figure behind them, Hermes Trismegistus, was understood by ancient people to be the same being as both Thoth and Hermes tells us something important. The ancient world itself recognized these gods as one. Hermes is the youngest of the three in terms of the civilization that produced him. The Greeks came after the Sumerians and Egyptians. But that makes the parallels more striking, not less, because the Greeks developed their version of this figure independently of direct Sumerian influence, and yet arrived at virtually the same description. Hermes in Greek mythology is the messenger of the gods, the one who moves between the divine realm and the human world, the guide of souls to the underworld, the god of language, writing, commerce, science, and boundaries, the trickster who outwits the other gods but always ultimately serves a deeper order. He carries the caduceus, two serpents wound around a winged staff. That image is so enduring that it remains the symbol of medicine and healing in the modern world, thousands of years after the civilization that created it has vanished. And Hermes has a specific title that connects him directly to Thoth. Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great Hermes, was not a Greek invention. It was a Greco-Egyptian fusion created during the Hellenistic period when Greek and Egyptian scholars worked together and recognized that their traditions were describing the same thing. Ancient scholars, people who lived far closer to these traditions than we do, looked at Enki, Thoth, and Hermes and said, these are the same. They did not treat it as coincidence. They treated it as confirmation. The question we have to sit with is why modern scholarship is so reluctant to take that ancient consensus seriously. So here's where we land. Three of the most sophisticated civilizations in human history, all describing the same being, same role, same symbols, same gifts to humanity, same association with wisdom, writing, science, and the space between worlds. There are only three explanations for this. The first one is coincidence, that three separate cultures independently invented an identical figure by accident. Most serious scholars find this unsatisfying. The correspondences are too specific and too numerous to dismiss as parallel invention. The second is cultural diffusion, that these traditions spread from one source civilization to the others through trade or contact we haven't fully documented yet. That is more plausible, but still leaves significant question. Where did the original tradition come from? The third explanation, the one ancient scholars themselves lean toward and that modern researchers in this field are increasingly returning to, is that Enki, Thoth, and Hermes are all the memories of the same real individual, a being of extraordinary knowledge and capability who interacted with multiple ancient civilizations, who gave them the foundations of their knowledge, and who was remembered, imperfectly, through the lens of each culture's understanding, as a god. If that is true, what we call mythology is something else entirely. It is testimony, the oldest eyewitness account in human history, preserved in stone and clay and papyrus across thousands of years, of a being that was real. In part 2, we're going to go deeper into the pantheon, because Enki, Thoth, and Hermes are not the only gods that every ancient culture shares. The king of gods, the ruler of the sky, the wielder of lightning, the appears in every tradition also. And the parallels there are even harder to explain away. The ancient world was not primitive. It was not superstitious. It was not making things up to explain thunder and earthquakes. It was documenting something. Something real enough that it left the same fingerprints on every major civilization that encountered it. In stone, in clay, in papyrus, and oral tradition passed down for thousands of years until someone finally wrote it down. We've spent centuries calling it mythology. Maybe it's time we start calling it what ancient people themselves called it: history. Thank you for your time today, and I appreciate you watching. Please subscribe for part 2 and drop a comment below. Enki, Thoth, Hermes, same being or 3 separate gods? Tell me what you think. Thank you all.